think of West Virginia and alcohol, the last thing that may come to your mind is beer. More likely, you're going to think of something like this: moonshine, for which the state is justly famous. They still make moonshine here, and it's delicious. However, what is less well known is that West Virginia once produced a good portion of the nation's beer.
Like many places in the United States, beer in West Virginia came with an influx of German immigrants in the late 19th century. The Germans came here to build the first national turnpike, first national highway, work in the state's coal mines, extract West Virginia's plentiful petroleum reserves, harvest her abundant timber, and work in her steel plants and world-class and world-famous glass factories. The early epicenter for making the beer that would serve this growing and thirsty population was Wheeling, the Nail City. There was even a brew made here called Nail City Beer. In fact, Wheeling's nickname, Nail City, was rivaled with that of the Beer Belly due to the copious amounts of alcohol consumption. At one point, the city boasted 20 breweries with names such as Balzer, Eagle, Raymond, Schmulbach, F.J. Rothacker, and Moss and Gaiman. The reason for so many breweries is that it was not only the state's capital and most populous city, Wheeling also had access to road, rail, and river traffic, and it had in the area caves that provided optimal cellaring for the final product. The two industry leaders were the Raymond Brewing Company, which produced 150,000 barrels per year, and the Schmulbach Brewing Company, which opened in 1855 and eventually produced 200,000 barrels of beer each year. There were, of course, dozens of other breweries around the state, most notably in Parkersburg, home to the Parkersburg Brewing Company, Fairmont, where they made Whitecap, Bluefield, in the southern part of the state where brands such as El Capitan, Blue Export, and other varietals were bottled, Charleston, which eventually became the state capital and was home to the Kanawha Brewing Company and Kanawha Chief Beer, among others, and down the road in Huntington, where a host of breweries proliferated, but which, like in the rest of the state, eventually dwindled down to the West Virginia Brewing Company before it became known by the more recognizable name, Fessenmeyer. And so West Virginia may have eventually become as well known for its beer as Cincinnati and Milwaukee were for theirs, were it not for Prohibition. No, not that Prohibition. West Virginia Prohibition. The Yost Law, which came in 1914, 5 years before the more famous 18th Amendment, the Volstead Act. Temperance, or abstinence from all alcohol, had become a huge force in West Virginia. It is said by some to stem from what had become the state's main source of employment, coal mining. Not a pleasant occupation even today, it was even more laborious in the days before mechanization. Pay was poor, and the men thus employed were often miserable. And so they did what many such laborers have done throughout history: got drunk on payday. This is supposedly part of the reason for the infamous scrip system, where employers paid their help with their own minted coin that could only be spent in company-owned stores. That way, the money ostensibly went to the woman of the house and not to the saloon keeper, so that at least groceries and rent could get paid. Even so, drunkenness from beer, moonshine, whiskey, and hard cider West Virginia was once a big apple growing region, still proliferated. And so legally enforced abstinence was seen to be the solution to this ever pressing problem. Like the rest of the country, Prohibition went away here in 1933. Some breweries came back, most notably Fessenmeyer. Unfortunately, the national breweries and strong regional beer makers such as Stroh's and Falls City out of Louisville, as well as somewhat smaller breweries such as Iron City, pushed out Fessenmeyer from the market and it went out of business. We thought it was the best beer around, a company official said, but since it was local, people thought it wasn't as good as the other brands. We didn't have as much advertising as the others. We should have sold a lot more beer. Indeed, aside from a billboard or two, the brewery could hardly afford any advertising, using the motto, West Virginia, that'll win ya, to help build its name ID. It even built a tourist attraction, Little Switzerland. But Little Switzerland failed to become a tourist attraction, and in 1971, Fessenmeyer shut its doors for good. Today, the former site of the brewery is, in the best of all American traditions, a shopping center. In the mid-1990s, the state saw its first microbrewery come into existence, the Charleston Brewing Company, which brewed several varietals, including Seneca Red, named for Seneca Rocks, one of the most beautiful and majestic spots in the world. The oldest brewery still in existence today is the North End Tavern and Brewery, which first opened in 1899 as a tavern and was later expanded to a brewery almost a century later in 1997. The 2005 established Mountain State Brewing Company remains West Virginia's largest brewery. Each year, the state enjoys the West Virginia Craft Beer Festival, which is way too expensive in my opinion, and West Virginia Craft Beer Week. The state is starting to gain a reputation for making very good beer. Indeed, some of the more popular breweries that you can find outside of the state are Bridge Brew Works, Big Timber Brewing Company, Stumptown Ales, and Greenbrier Valley Brewing. These are just some of the brewing companies here in the Mountain State. Nearly all of them produce at least something decent, and some of them produce stuff that is absolutely great. So the next time you're at your beer store, why not check to see if they have something brewed here in West Virginia? We hillbillies not only make great moonshine, we make great beer too. And also, if you like these videos and would like to see them keep coming, or at least want to know when the next time is that we make one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, maybe even smash it. Give us a thumbs up, do the share thing, and in the meantime, maybe even leave us a comment telling us what beers you would like us to review. Until next time, I'm Brian, and thanks for being with me here on Beer with Brian.